A black man is denied a loan and humiliated by a rude bank teller. Little does she know he's the new CEO of the bank. Watch what happens when the tables turn. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. It was a regular Wednesday morning at Clearwater Bank in Atlanta, Georgia. The air was thick with the quiet hum of printers, keyboards clicking, and low murmurs from customers. Most of the employees moved about, heads down, handling routine transactions. That's when it happened. A moment that would change everything for everyone in that room. Marcus Reed walked through the glass doors, his stride confident but unassuming. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his polished leather briefcase swung lightly in his hand. To most people, he might have looked like any other professional. But to Marcus, this visit was personal. The receptionist greeted him with a polite smile, but as Marcus approached the loan desk, he was met with something else entirely. Sitting behind the counter was Laura Simmons, a middle-aged bank teller with a sharp bob and an even sharper attitude. Laura's day had already been long, and the sight of Marcus seemed to irritate her instantly. Without looking up, she muttered, "Take a seat. I'll be with you in a moment." Marcus waited patiently, observing as Laura seemed to take extra time shuffling through papers and typing on her computer. When she finally looked up, her expression was far from welcoming. "How can I help you today?" she asked, her tone clipped, her eyes scanning him quickly before settling on his briefcase. "I'm here to discuss a business loan," Marcus said evenly, his voice calm but firm. Laura raised an eyebrow. "A business loan," she repeated, her disbelief apparent. She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I don't," Marcus replied, "but I was told I could speak to someone about the process." Laura let out a small sigh, as if the request were a personal inconvenience. "Well, these things usually require an appointment," she said, "but I suppose I can give you a few minutes. Let's start with the basics. What kind of business are you trying to open?" Marcus smiled politely. "I'm not opening a business. I already own one. I'm looking to expand." Laura's skepticism deepened. She glanced at her computer screen, clearly uninterested in hearing more. "Do you have financial statements, proof of income, anything to show that you're qualified for a loan?" "I have all the necessary documents with me," Marcus said, reaching for his briefcase. But before he could open it, Laura held up her hand, stopping him. "Let's not waste time," she said bluntly. "Loans like these require substantial collateral and a strong credit history. Are you sure this is something you're ready for?" Marcus paused, taking in her tone and the way she seemed to look right through him. He wasn't surprised. He had seen this kind of attitude before, but he wasn't here to argue or prove himself to anyone. "I'm more than ready," Marcus replied simply, handing her a folder. Laura took the folder reluctantly, flipping through it with exaggerated slowness. Her face remained unreadable until she reached a particular page. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Mr. Reed," she said, her tone suddenly icy, "this bank doesn't typically approve loans for high-risk applicants." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "High risk?" "Yes," she said, setting the folder down as though it were tainted. "Your profile. Well, it's not exactly the type we prioritize. I'm sure you understand." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus held her gaze, his expression calm but sharp. He didn't need to say anything. Her words had already revealed far more than she intended. Before he could respond, Laura leaned forward, her voice dropping to a patronizing whisper. "I'd suggest you try one of those smaller community banks. They might be more flexible." Marcus leaned back slightly, letting her words hang in the air. A faint smile crossed his lips, but it wasn't one of amusement. He glanced at the nameplate on her desk. "Laura Simmons, Senior Loan Officer." "I appreciate your suggestion, Miss Simmons," he said, his tone steady, "but I think I'll wait to speak with someone else, someone in a position to make decisions based on merit." Laura's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" But Marcus didn't elaborate. Instead, he stood, gathering his papers and calmly leaving her desk. He didn't look back as he walked across the lobby. What Laura didn't know, and was about to find out, was that Marcus Reed wasn't just another hopeful loan applicant. He was the newly appointed CEO of Clearwater Bank, and this meeting wasn't about securing a loan. It was about evaluating the people who represented the company he was about to lead. After leaving Laura's desk, Marcus walked straight to the receptionist. Calmly, he asked for the branch manager. The receptionist hesitated for a moment, confused by the request, but quickly recovered. "Of course," she said. "Mr. Davis is in his office. Let me notify him." Laura, meanwhile, had returned to her paperwork, thinking the matter was over. She barely noticed Marcus as he disappeared behind the glass door leading to the manager's office. Inside, Marcus greeted Mr. Davis, a man in his late 40s, with a warm demeanor and a firm handshake. Marcus didn't waste time. "I'm Marcus Reed, the new CEO of Clearwater Bank," he said, handing Mr. Davis his credentials. The manager's eyes widened as he quickly scanned the documents. "Mr. Reed, I didn't realize you were visiting today. It's an honor to meet you, sir." Marcus nodded. "I decided to stop by unannounced to see how things operate at the branch level. Let's just say I've already had quite the experience." Mr. Davis shifted uncomfortably. "I hope everything was to your satisfaction," he said cautiously. "Not quite," Marcus replied, his tone neutral, but firm. "I'd like to have a word with one of your employees, Miss Laura Simmons. Could you ask her to join us?" Davis hesitated, unsure of what had transpired, but quickly complied. He stepped out of the office and returned a moment later with Laura, who looked surprised and slightly annoyed. As she entered the office, her expression shifted when she saw Marcus seated comfortably behind the desk. She glanced at Mr. Davis, confused. Mr. Davis, what's going on?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Laura, this is Mr. Marcus Reed," Davis said, gesturing toward him. "He's the new CEO of Clearwater Bank." Laura's face went pale. She blinked, processing the revelation, and then looked at Marcus, who gave her a calm, measured look. "You're the CEO?" she stammered. "That's correct," Marcus said evenly. "And earlier, I was the customer at your desk seeking a loan. Do you recall our interaction?" Laura opened her mouth to respond, but hesitated, clearly scrambling to come up with the right words. "I didn't know who you were," she finally said. "Would it have mattered?" Marcus asked, his tone sharp, but calm. "Tell me, Miss Simmons, was it my request for a loan that led you to dismiss me so quickly, or was it something else entirely?" "I didn't dismiss you," Laura protested weakly. "I was just following protocol. You didn't have an appointment, and Marcus held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Let's be clear. Your behavior wasn't about protocol. You made assumptions about me based on how I look. You didn't take the time to review my credentials properly or even give me a fair chance to explain my situation. That's not the kind of service we pride ourselves on at Clearwater Bank." Laura's face flushed red. "I didn't mean any disrespect," she said quickly. "It was just a misunderstanding." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. "Miss Simmons, I've worked my entire life to break barriers and create opportunities, not just for myself, but for others like me who have been underestimated. What happened today isn't just about me. It's about the kind of culture we're fostering in this company." The room was silent, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. "I'll be conducting a full review of your performance," Marcus continued. "In the meantime, I expect you to reflect on what happened today and consider how your actions impact the people we serve. Every customer who walks through these doors deserves respect, regardless of their background or appearance. Do you understand?" Laura nodded quickly, her usual confidence replaced with unease. "Yes, sir, I understand." Marcus turned to Mr. Davis. "I trust you'll ensure this matter is handled appropriately." "Absolutely, sir," Davis said, his tone resolute. Marcus stood, signaling the conversation was over. Laura exited the office, her steps hurried and her head down. Mr. Davis followed, leaving Marcus alone for a moment. As he walked back through the lobby, Marcus couldn't help but notice the difference in how everyone now looked at him. The same employees who had barely glanced at him earlier now offered polite smiles and eager greetings. But Marcus didn't stop. He wasn't there to bask in his authority. He was there to make a statement. And as he stepped outside into the bright Atlanta sun, he knew this was just the beginning of the change he wanted to bring. Some lessons, he thought, aren't taught with words alone. Sometimes people need to see for themselves what fairness, respect, and leadership truly look like.